Welcome back to the Madison Advisory AI podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Werner Thompson, founder of Madison Advisory AI. This show sits at the intersection of leadership, judgment, and technology. Because while AI and automation are accelerating decisions everywhere, thoughtful human systems will determine whether those decisions create real value or real harm. Today's conversation is about a space where that distinction matters deeply: adolescent behavioral health. When a teenager is in crisis, families are often navigating the most confusing moment of their lives, trying to understand what's happening, what care is appropriate, what's available, and what they can actually access. At the same time, there's a growing public narrative around residential treatment, some of it grounded, some of it not, which can make finding trust even harder to find. My guest today is Brent, a licensed marriage and family therapist with about 25 years of experience and the executive director at Oasis in Utah, a short-term assessment driven adolescent program designed to stabilize teens, clarify what's really going on, and help families chart a responsible path forward. In this episode, we talk about Brent's evolution from clinician to leader, what Oasis's model looks like in practice, what's broken in access and navigation, including the role of insurance, and how technology and AI can support clinicians and families without replacing what ultimately requires human connection and trust. Brent, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amanda. That was a nice summarized introduction there. I
Hopefully
appreciate
I
that.
hopefully I captured
You
all of it.
you did. You captured a lot in a short period of time.
Well, you've spent about 25 years in adolescent behavioral health. Can you walk us through the evolution of your career from therapist to clinician leader to executive director, and what changed as you and your responsibilities changed?
Absolutely. Yeah, about 25 years ago, a little over 25 years ago, I finished graduate school, became a associate marriage and family therapist, worked under a licensed and approved supervisor at that point in time, and started at an adolescent residential treatment center in southern Utah. And immediately I fell in love with working with teenagers and with their families, and to some extent maybe happened in a little bit into this particular space. Many people would ask me, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, or do you have a private practice, and are you doing private practice? And the reality was I started into this adolescent residential treatment and behavioral health space, and just continued on in this particular part of the mental health world. And I evolved, I guess, relatively quickly from a young therapist learning how to work with teens and their families to, in the residential program that I worked for initially, to have an opportunity to become a clinical director just a couple of years into being a therapist, which gave me some great opportunities to learn how to not just work with teens and their families, but also work within larger organizations. And one of the things I appreciated about my education as a marriage and family therapist was they really work in marriage and family therapy programs on helping their students to be able to learn about systems within like a family setting, then that also translates into larger organizational settings. So you've got the kind of the micro system of a nuclear family, and then you've got the kind of more the macro system of a larger organization. And so as I evolved into a clinical director, learning to work with my clinicians on the work that they do with their teens and their families, as well as helping them in their interactions with each other and with the other departments. One of the amazing parts of working in a residential program is you have your clinical aspect and your clinical team, your therapists, uh, and yet you also have the academic portion of it and interacting with the teachers. You have the residential piece of it, and our residential staff are really the ones that spend 95% of the time with the teens as they live in a residential setting. So bringing all those together is really, really important, and being able to have synergy and trust between those departments is really key. And so as a young clinical director, my job was to oversee and facilitate treatment team on a weekly basis that included the therapists, the academic folks, and the residential team, and help them to kind of come together on plans that, how they're working the treatment plan and how they're helping the teen and the family to be able to continue to make progress on the goals that have been set for them. So that was an amazing experience, very young in my career, and then kind of from that point evolved into a few years later at another residential program, having an administrator come up to me on a particular day and said, "Brent, I think you'd be a good admissions director. Have you ever thought about doing admissions?" And I said, "I've never thought about that ever before." And he said, "I think you have a little bit of a skill set that you could do well with that." And so then I was given an opportunity to work in the admissions realm, and I was able to see and utilize my clinical skills to be able to identify what is an appropriate student for us to serve at this residential program, and making sure that we have some level of confidence that they're within our parameters clinically, that we'll be able to help them reach that kid, reach that family, and help them have a successful outcome. And so using my clinical skills up front to be able to assess and appropriately vet potential students for us and families, and then also kind of combining that with some outward facing business development and community outreach support. So that was kind of my next, I guess, uh, opportunity within this little world, and I really appreciated being able to connect with families up front, and when families call a residential treatment program, they're typically in a state of crisis, and
Right.
they're not sure where to go or what to do, and there's a lot of options that are out there, and so to try to help them navigate through that, have them calm enough to be able to make good decisions, potentially have them come to your program to be able to tour through if that's possible and if there's time to do that. And then ultimately having them be able to trust their own gut as a parent, knowing their child better than anybody else as to what is going to be the most appropriate place for them to go. And so that was really fulfilling and gratifying to be able to do that upfront work as an admissions and business development director, while at the same time using those clinical skills to be able to help the teens and families, and really with a lot of parents on the phone doing kind of almost like mini therapy sessions with them on the phone as they're calling for the first time, and trying to help them to kind of ease their concerns and their anxiety, and understand that, hey, there are options out there. There is help, and here's how we can help you to navigate through
Yeah.
this. And so by taking the clinical aspect, the clinical director kind of administrative role, and then the business development and admissions role kind of came together. And after doing admissions for probably about 15 years, and kind of the opportunity came to be able to start a residential program, and kind of bringing those different skill sets together as an executive director to be able to effectively understand what is it like to be a clinical director, what's it like to be an admissions director, and also what's it like to be residential staff or residential director in a program, and how all those come together to be able to once again, create synergy and trust, and really be able to provide quality support to the teens and families that are being served in that particular program.
So your background really evolved throughout the years, and it's the culmination of all those experiences really did lead you where you are today as executive director. And I love that you had a great experience as admission director, because you're right. When a family calls, they really are in crisis and they need someone with a clinical background or someone to reach out at an appropriate level to be able to navigate those changes. For our listeners that may not know what short term adolescent residential care actually looks like, how do you describe what Oasis does and who it's designed to serve?
Absolutely. So about 5 years ago, when we started Oasis, there was really nothing like it that existed. And so what we did with Oasis is it's kind of a combination of a previous program that I started that was really what I would call a traditional short-term residential program. And I took kind of some of the concepts that I learned as I started that program, and combined it with an assessment center, understanding that so many of the students that we serve, the parents and or the referring professional doesn't have an accurate diagnosis on their son or daughter or their or student or their patient. And they're looking to try to drill down on diagnosis so that they can better identify what are the appropriate services for this particular child or teen. And so what I did is I once again took the concept of uh, developing a comprehensive assessment that includes psychological testing. It includes genomic testing to be able to identify what are the most appropriate meds and how are they going to be best metabolized by that particular teen. Nutritional, full health and physical examination, academic testing, bringing all those assessments together to really create what we consider almost like a little owner's manual for the particular student, right? And the assessments themselves usually are about 150 pages in length, and so they're very, very extensive, and really once again helps to drill down on diagnosis so that they can better understand, okay, what is going to be the most appropriate next step. So you've got the assessment piece of that. And there were assessment centers a handful of years ago out there that were fairly sterile settings that would do assessment and focus on that. And it would take about 30 to 45 days. And then at that point, about 45-day mark, they would then, discharge the student to another level of care. And in reality, as we helped kind of together collectively, our team develop Oasis, we could see that if we could combine the assessment piece of this on the front end with short-term residential on the back end and extend the length of stay, then some of these kids, instead of having to go on to another long-term program, potentially could get stable enough, learn the skills they need to in order to be able to go home. And I think obviously that's the goal that we're all working towards when we're talking about teens and adolescent residential treatment. If we want to eventually get these teens back to their families, and not all of them are ready to do that. And there are many students that we serve that come from, let's say, another long-term residential program. They come to us to kind of have a reset because they've had some significant issues with self-harm or suicidal ideation within that residential program. They come to us to hit the reset button and also to be able to do some additional testing to get maybe an updated diagnosis. Some of those students are going to need to go on to another long-term program. That's the reality. Okay. So that being said, we found that especially as students are coming from home, where they're coming from failing at other levels of care, they've done extensive outpatient treatment, they've done intensive outpatient treatment, they've done partial programs, and potentially been in the hospital multiple times, a psychiatric hospital, and they come to us from a home setting, then the chances of us being able to get that comprehensive assessment, get the appropriate diagnosis, and then be able to have the short-term residential piece, get them to, 60, 70 days of treatment to a point of stability that they have an opportunity to not just have the teen doing some significant work here and learning skills, but the family systems piece is such a key element. And that's obviously one of my passions is as a family therapist is making sure that the parents are doing the work that they need to do while the teen is here and collectively so that they can be able to make appropriate adjustments and changes and give the teen and the family the best opportunity to be able to be successful once the teen returns home. And so the magic that we've seen happen is as we get appropriate diagnosis and as we help the teen and the parents understand that diagnosis and do the family systems work collectively together, along with teaching them skills. And oftentimes these skills are related to dialectical behavioral therapy and teaching them just emotional self-regulation skills that the teen can practice, that the parents can practice, that they can practice collectively together. That's what has given these families great opportunities to be able to have success at home. And we've seen so many families that have been able to see the fruits of their work even back in their home setting. So once again, a handful of years ago, there wasn't anything like this. We've developed this model, and there's been a few that have kind of popped up around there that around the country that are similar to it, and so that's really kind of the focus. Like I said, it's a hybrid model that is unlike your traditional just kind of sterile environment that's an assessment center that has the team there the whole time and they're not leaving.
Right.
campus. So the other unique aspects of it is that once we get a student stable with us, then we're getting them out into the community. We're engaging in a lot of experiential or recreational therapy activities so that we can see not only how the teen utilizes their skills of emotional self-regulation in a controlled, contained environment like we have on campus at Oasis, we also want to see how they interact in the community when they're maybe in a little more stressful situation, when they're out in social situations, because that gives us a tremendous amount of information to be able to determine, hey, is this teen ready to go home and be able to practice these skills back in the community, or do they need to go to an additional treatment program, a longer term setting where they can continue to practice those skills prior to getting that opportunity to go home?
And you shared an example in our previous conversations about a teen you were skiing with. Would you be comfortable or open to sharing that experience you had?
Unique experiences that I've had here, specifically when we talk about skiing, like we talked about, and I was mentioning just doing experiential activities. There are a lot of students that come here to Utah, which we somewhat pride ourselves in having some of the greatest snow on earth here. And a lot of these kids have never skied before. And skiing is not the easiest thing. And in fact, I didn't really ski much growing up, partly because it was so expensive. And I came from a family of seven, and it just wasn't really feasible. And because I was involved in sports, and the coach would be like, "Yeah, we don't want you out skiing because you're going to get injured doing that, right?" So for those reasons, I never really learned how to ski when I was younger. It really wasn't until I became a therapist in a residential program and skied about 8 times one ski season about 22 years ago that I learned how to ski. And I'm not a fantastic skier. I'm just good enough to be able to keep up with the kids. And yet that was when I learned how to ski. And so I know how difficult it is to actually learn that. And it's so incredible when you get kids doing something that's outside their comfort zone to see actually how do they figure out how to regulate themselves, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anxiety, because it's happening real time in front of you. And so a few years ago, we took some students skiing, and and I just treat these students that we have here at Oasis just like I treat my own kids. And when I went to teach my own kids how to ski, I just said, "Hey, we're going to go up on the left here, and we're going to go up to the first drop off, and we're going to figure this out together." And so I was on one side of this particular young man. I had a staff on the other side, and we just kind of helped him ease up to where the chair was going to pick us up. And so as the chair kind of swept underneath us and picked us up, we started to lift up, and immediately the kid started to kind of white knuckle it, and he said, "Oh my goodness, I'm afraid of heights." And I was like, "Oh man, I guess I forgot to tell you, we're going to go up a little bit high here for a few minutes before we drop back down." And so we're sitting there on the ski lift, and this is a kid, once again, never skied before in his life. So we get to the first drop off, and the resort we go to is Sundance here, and it's actually the first drop off. It's a very easy hill. It's a great hill to be able to teach students. And myself and the staff, and we had one other student that was with us. And so we got off and started the other staff that was with me started to teach this young man how to ski in kind of the pizza formation, how to go slower. And anyway, so I went with this other student and skied down the mountain, and then we just kept taking turns. And then as I came up, then I had the other staff go with him, and I would go with this kid and try to help him. And let's say the hill that usually would take you about 5 minutes to get down took this young man the entire 3.5 hours that we spent skiing to get down the hill one time. Okay. And so it happened to be my turn right as we got to the very bottom of the hill, as we're almost to the finish to where he was going to be done. And I'm holding on to his coat, doing the little pizza move and saying, "Hey, pizza, pizza, pizza," right? You keep your skis together to go slow. And as he fell in front of me, like accidentally, then I fell like right on top of him. And he looks up at me and he says, "Brent, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm okay. Are you all right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he started to laugh. And I was surprised, honestly, because I thought this kid was if I were him, I would have been super frustrated, like hours to get down the hill one time. And he wasn't. He was just having a great time. And so we made it down to the bottom of the mountain. We got in the van and drove home. And as we got into back into to Oasis, as we walked in, some of the other students came out and said, "Hey, we'll call him John. John, how did it go today?" And he said to him, "It was awesome, and I'm planning to go again next week." And I was shocked by it, honestly, because I was like, if I were this kid, I would never go again, ever.
Mm-hmm.
I would be so frustrated. And yet he wasn't. And he learned a level of resiliency. And so the interesting thing is the next week we went, he went with the staff, and I didn't go the next time. And the staff, I think, maybe it went a little easier on him than I did, but they let him go on the bunny hill this next time. And then they let him snowboard. And this time, as he snowboarded, he realized, you know what? I'm actually better at snowboarding than I am at skiing. And so then he was able to go again and do snowboarding up on the bigger hill, and was able to find some level of proficiency. So those are some of the amazing experiences that happen. Now here's the part that really gets to me. So this young man, after being with us, I think probably about 65, 70 days or so, it comes time for him to graduate. And his parents came, and they were there waiting in the front lobby for his graduation to start. And I happened to walk out in the front lobby. The parents said, "Brent, we want to thank you so much for taking John skiing." And they said, we would have never taken him skiing because we thought he was fragile. And now we know he's not. He's strong, and that he can do difficult things. And that's one of the key elements to what we're doing here at Oasis, is we're trying to help these students and families have different, unique experiences that they can build upon, to build their self-esteem, to build their confidence, to realize they can do difficult things. Because the next time when that young man was having a hard time, as he went back to a large high school, like he can think back on the hard times that he had going down the ski mountain, and how he figured out how to do it and how to do it better, and to come to the point where he actually gained confidence. And that's one of the powerful parts of creating these experiences for the students that we serve.
And that's impactful, that it not only was helpful for him and he learned resiliency from it, but that his family saw him in a different light and saw that he was able to accomplish things like that. And you were able to put him in difficult environments. So all around,
Absolutely.
a great story, which does lead me to my next question. Given that experience, how do you define when a teen is actually ready to step down to a lower level of care or back to the home environment?
Yes, absolutely. So we have each teen that we serve here, the therapist works with the teen and the parents to develop a treatment plan. And that treatment plan consists of goals related to their diagnoses and related to their family. And as they develop those goals, with each goal, they develop objectives and also interventions. And the interventions are almost like mini goals that the students are working on, that the parents are working on a weekly basis, that help them to be able to achieve their treatment plans. And so over the period of time that they're here on a weekly basis, we have treatment team meeting that includes, the clinicians run by our clinical director, includes the residential staff run by our, residential director, our medical staff as well. We have directors of nursing here that are involved with that, as well as our academic staff. And so they all sit down together and talk about every student each week and the progress that they're making on their goals. And so by the time that the student is able to complete 80% of their goals of their treatment plan, that's what earns them an opportunity to be able to graduate from our program. Is through that assessment of the treatment plan.
And how does the insurance environment shape the care that you're able to provide or not able to provide?
Yeah, thank you. And insurance is a key element here, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Amanda, because one of the elements and one of our core missions here at Oasis is to create greater access to families across the country and even around the world to residential treatment services. So as we developed Oasis, I mean, I've looked at numerous programs, and really the all the programs I've ever worked for, I could never afford for my own family, because typically residential treatment is about $15,000 a month. And your normal middle class folks can't afford that. And so there was a lot of people that we were serving in other residential programs that were the 0.001, you know, multimillionaires that could afford it. So as we developed Oasis, we wanted to have a model that all families that had it could access via their insurance. And so with that, we have developed this short-term model that insurance is number one, is willing to work with, right? Insurance isn't willing to pay for a program that's a year long. It just doesn't happen. And yet, what we've done is, as we put really quality clinicians together, along with a really fantastic utilization review team, and those utilization review team are those that interface directly with the insurance company. By putting that together, it allows us to be able to work directly with insurance, pre-authorize each student that comes in here, so that what a family ends up paying is their deductible and their co-insurance in order for them to be able to receive treatment here at Oasis. And so that's obviously a lot less expensive. You're talking, instead of paying, 100,000+ for treatment, you're paying somewhere between, let's say 10 and let's say 20,000, whatever your deductible is. And so, and yet, to your question, one of the key elements is being able to provide quality information, clinical information, for the insurance company to be able to meet medical necessity. And so that's where our therapists, our clinicians come in and have to really be able to not only do quality work with the teen and the family, but really document quality work, and documenting that in such a way that really is helping our utilization review team to be able to fight the good fight with the insurance company, help the insurance company understand, hey, there's a reason why they're being provided services here at Oasis, and it's because of these reasons, to be able to keep them safe because they've had these issues, and they're making progress in these areas, and yet there's also some continued struggles in these other areas, and that's why it's justified to have continued stay here at Oasis. And that ties in a little bit too into, Amanda, what we were talking about in our previous conversation related to AI. And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but one of the things we've been able to tap into are some AI resources for our clinicians. And as I've had a chance to test these tools out myself, one of the things that I've dreaded over my career as a therapist is, I love interfacing and interacting with the teens and with the families. I love doing the therapy work face to face. What I didn't ever love doing is the documentation. And I would spend hours on Fridays and Saturdays documenting all the sessions I did during the week. And now we have the capability with some AI resources and support, where either it can be dictated like right after, where I can talk to an AI and have that help me generate a really nice note that meets medical necessity, or even better, having AI record a session, whether it's an individual, family, or group session, and then be able to generate a note that to be able to once again, to meet medical necessity, that can be included in the chart. That those are creating such amazing efficiencies for our therapists. And we've only been doing this now with our AI support for probably 6 or 8 months now. And yet it is allowing therapists to spend more quality time with their clients, with their students and the families that we serve, and less time doing the documentation piece, which I think I'm not alone in the fact that, the documentation piece is not fun, and yet it's necessary to do.
Right. It's an absolute necessity, but it's not the best use of their time and skill set, even perhaps. So that's a
Absolutely.
great use case for AI and how technology can be helpful in healthcare and behavioral health in particular. Have you started thinking about AI in aftercare planning at all?
Yes, we have. In fact, we're in the process of doing a little pilot with an AI program that will help us to work with the student and the parents in development of aftercare plans. And like I mentioned before, we have some students that go on to another residential program, a long-term program. And, the aftercare plan piece may not be as robust for that student because they're going to this other program prior to them going home. And yet those students that have the opportunity to go home, it's super important for students and parents alike to be able to be on the same page related to what the expectations are. And there's a lot of aftercare planning that's done out there. And over the years, I've seen it done all different ways. And yet as we've started to fold AI support into helping develop these plans, it's been really interesting. And like I said, we're just doing a pilot right now, even as we speak, where a student can sit down and with their therapist and utilize and tap into an AI coach that the AI can pull from all the information that we have, like I indicated before, all the information from the comprehensive assessment that we've developed here at Oasis, all the information from previously that we've received prior to accepting the student, and the treatment plan and everything that we've developed during their stay here, pull that into the AI and have that AI help to generate some ideas of what expectations would be. Now, the interface that the student has with this AI coach, it's really an AI coach that will ask them, questions about what they see in their future, what they see expectations being at home, and helping them to be able to start thinking through that. All the meanwhile, a therapist is sitting in the room with them as they're having this interface with the AI coach. And so then as it completes, then it's helping to generate a plan for that student. And in the meantime, the parents are also working on a plan as well, that is pulled in to that AI coach to really try to bring it all together, because the system is the key, the family system, right? And making sure that what the parental expectations are, those that the teen understands. Here are the things that we potentially can negotiate, and then but there's also some things that are just non-negotiable, right, from a safety standpoint. And so we're just barely starting that, Amanda, and it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how that all plays out for us.
That'll be great to see the impact of that and see how you're able to align both the student and the family's expectations. And I love that the therapist is in the room too as you pilot this program. Is there anything when you think about technology, I'm sure there are things, but that you really think technology should not replace no matter how advanced it gets?
Absolutely. So when we think about research and therapy and what makes a client or a teen or a student have a successful outcome in therapy, or a family have successful outcome, really it's all about the connection. Connection is the key. And even as just a few minutes before I got on this podcast, I was interacting with a family of a student that's graduating today, and just talking to him a little bit about their son. He's been an amazing, amazing addition to our student body here at Oasis. In fact, he has currently been serving as our student council president, and certainly a young man who's had some challenges prior to coming here. Otherwise, the parents would not have sent him to a program. There's no parent that wakes up one day and says, "I'm going to send my kid to a residential program." Like I said previously, there's so many different failures that take place prior to them making probably what's typically the most difficult decision that they've ever made in their lives as parents, to send their teen to a program. And so as I see that these parents on the final day, as they're walking into their son's graduation, I was talking to them just a little bit about their son and how much we're going to miss him here, because he is such a great positive leader, and the skills that he has that are going to help him be successful in the future. As I'm talking to the parents, the therapist walked up, and the mom just gave the therapist the biggest hug, and was just expressing her gratitude with tears in her eyes of how grateful she is to the therapist, who really has been the catalyst for change. And really it goes back to the connection, the trust that's there. And that connection, that level of trust, that human element is never going to be replaced, in my opinion, by any kind of AI or automation. It's just not going to happen. AI can certainly help us be more efficient as human beings. And yet really it comes down to research has shown connection is the key for therapy to be able to be successful. You can set all the models aside and not have any idea about a model, and you can sit down with a teen or a parent, and they can feel from you whether or not you care, and you can connect with them, and by doing that and creating that human connection, that's what leads to magic happening. That's what led to this family today really feeling so much gratitude for this therapist who's been in this along this journey with him for the last couple of months. And now this teen and the family has an opportunity to test those skills outside of here, and they have so much more hope than they did previously.
And it has to be so rewarding to see that in action and to see a family really value the therapist as much as that as well. And I think that it's completely true. AI is able to really help us be more efficient, help productivity standards, but when it comes to that connection and human to human trust, it's really key to healthcare and to a lot of other industries as well. If there's one thing you wish families understood earlier before they were in crisis, what would it be?
Probably the fact that there's so many levels of care out there that the families just don't understand it. And you don't understand it until you're in the middle of it. And there are a lot of times where teens go from 0 to 100 and they're living at home, and then things go off the rail with their friends. They start getting poor grades. Maybe they start dabbling in substances. They've got some depression and some anxiety that's budding, and they start to maybe self-medicate, not knowing what to do, right? That the parents have just got separated or became divorced. Their best friends moved away. All these different factors go into teens having struggles, and not to mention the fact that probably in my opinion, the biggest thing that leads to teen struggles in this day and age being social media and the impact that that has on our kids. Um, all those factors go into it to knock these kids off the rails sometimes pretty quickly, and them going from seemingly doing okay to, oh, not now it's really bad, and maybe not even having any involvement with outpatient services, to next thing you know, the teen's in a hospital because they've made a suicide gesture or attempt. And when families do this, like and the teen engages in this behavior, they're not sure what to do. And probably on about probably every other week, I get a call from a community member, unassociated with like Oasis, anything like that. But because I'm involved in the community, and some people know me, they'll call and say, "Hey, you know what? This is what's occurred with my son or daughter, and we don't know what to do. Like, what are the resources that are out there?" And sometimes they're calling and saying, "Hey, do you think he or she'd be appropriate for Oasis?" And you know what? If a kid hasn't been involved in any kind of therapy previously, and they're going to the hospital for the first time, a residential program is not what they need. They need to be able to have some resources and at least try some resources within the community. And so trying to educate families on what those community resources are and what steps to take to be able to access those is sometimes can be really challenging and difficult. Many
Mm.
times we do testimonial videos here as students finish up at Oasis and as their parents do. And oftentimes parents will talk about the fact that I just didn't know what was out there. I had no idea like how to even go about finding a program and or finding, partial, hospital services or a day treatment program. And so a big part of that has to do with, I feel like, education and finding out who do you talk to in your community. And many of these people are actually talking to their friends and finding out a friend had their son or daughter go to some type of outpatient program or residential program, and that's how they're accessing resources. And so the more we can do, I believe, as a mental health community and as a behavioral health system, to educate people on what the resources are there, on being able to help them understand, how to go about, suicide awareness prevention, and how to and really basically how to talk to your teens about mental health issues, and as simple things like, depression and anxiety. Many times, I mean, as a therapist growing up, my 3 kids around the dinner table, as we checked in about school and how their day went at school, sometimes they say, "Oh, yeah, everything went great," and sometimes it'd be like it was a rough day, or it was a rough day at, football practice or whatever it was, and to be able to talk about, how they're doing and how they're feeling. I mean, a couple of my sons got injured in football, their senior seasons, and it was really disappointing. And when you go from engaging in exercise all the time to not being able to engage at all, like, you can become depressed really quickly. And so for us to have open conversations as parents with our teens about, you seem like you're kind of down and depressed. Are you feeling depressed? And being able to ask the question, like, are you feeling suicidal? Some parents shy away from asking those specific questions because they think somehow that's going to put a thought on their mind that is not accurate. That's not going to put a thought on their mind. It's actually going to help them to realize that, you know what, it's okay. If I was feeling that way, it would be okay for me to talk about that with my parent. And they need to have a trusted adult to be able to talk to, because so often these kids are talking to their friends about it, and their friends don't know what to say. Right. And so also educating the teens themselves and friends to be able to know. And like for my kids, that, hey, if a kid talks to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about harming myself," then to be able to let us know, let a teacher know, so that we can be able to provide you support. And that's never something that should be kept in secret. Even if a teen says to them, "I'm going to tell you something in secret, but you can't tell anybody." When it's about safety, you have to tell them, because that's for you showing care and concern for that friend, and you getting them the help that they need. And so that's a lot of what I've done over the years, is a lot of community education to try to help the families that are out there to better understand, hey, what are the resources there, and how do we go about talking to our kids about getting help?
That's great. And education seems to be a very key component for all levels and age ranges when it comes to uh, when it was awareness for mental health and behavioral health in general. I
Absolutely.
want to thank you, Brent, for the work that you do specifically, and for giving back to all the families, and describing to our listeners how clearly the problem is and what Oasis is doing to solve it. A few themes did stand out to me. One, that it's not just about access and beds or providers, but it's about understanding levels of care, what the care is, and understanding when your child or adolescent may be in crisis. I love that you mentioned asking the questions and saying that it's okay to ask about suicide, and really bring up the awareness of that. And also that standards matter. We didn't dive into this very deeply, but standards do matter in terms of quality of care and levels of care, and that AI can absolutely help in this matter of behavioral health, especially in terms of giving clinicians back their time. So, for listeners, if you know someone or someone you love is navigating adolescent mental health, I hope this conversation brought you clarity and hope. And if you are looking for any resources, we are going to have Oasis and Brent's information in the show notes. And Brent, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Amanda.